Hi, I'm Diana. My dad sold my car without asking just to help pay for my brother's $50,000 wedding. They told me I should feel honored. Like being robbed by your own family is some kind of compliment. And when I tried to speak up, my brother said, "You've always been the extra." 1 week later, they came begging. But by then, I wasn't the same Diana anymore. Um, I got home just after sunset, the kind of golden haze that makes everything feel softer than it really is. My feet were sore, my back ached, and all I could think about was getting into my car and driving out of town, just me, the open road, and a weekend with no one else's needs tugging at my sleeves. That car, it wasn't just a car, it was freedom. It was mine. I bought it after years of ramen dinners and double shifts, the first real thing I owned that wasn't a compromise or secondhand, but it wasn't in the driveway. At first, I thought I'd forgotten where I parked it. I stood there a minute, keys still in hand, squinting like it might reappear if I looked hard enough. Then I walked inside. My dad was in his usual spot recliner, feet up, TV glowing in the background. "Dad, where's my car?" He didn't even look away from the screen. "Oh yeah, I sold it." Just like that, like he was mentioning the weather. "You what?" "I sold it," he said again, slower this time, like maybe I didn't speak English anymore. "Your brother needed help with the wedding expenses. Figured you'd understand." I stared at him. My heartbeat didn't even race, just slowed, like my body was trying to make sense of something that made no sense. "No one talked to me. No one asked. You've got a good job, Diana. You don't even use it much." My hands trembled, but I didn't scream. I should have. Instead, I just stood there, the betrayal settling in my bones like cold. Mom walked in from the kitchen, drying her hands. "Honey, it's just a car." My brother popped in, grinning, like he won the lottery. "Thanks, sis. It means a lot." I felt the floor shift beneath me. It wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about being overlooked. Again. Devalued. Again. And this time, they didn't even bother to lie. Later that night, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, memories trickling back like unwelcome guests. The lunch money I gave up in 7th grade so my brother could go on a school trip. The way I used my first paycheck from my part-time job to buy him a new backpack because his had torn. The countless times I was told to be the bigger person. And I was. I always was. But no one ever asked if it broke something inside me each time I did. Even Mom used to say, "Boys need more support." He's under a lot of pressure. What about me? I bought that car after I finally paid off my student loans. I walked into the dealership alone, signed the papers alone, and drove it home blasting music like I was finally arriving in my own life. Now, it was gone, and they didn't think it was worth discussing. The next night at dinner, I forced myself to sit at the table. I needed to see if anyone would acknowledge what they did. They didn't. The conversation danced around floral arrangements and guest lists, and how the venue had this perfect golden hour lighting. My brother's fiancée, Rebecca, talked about her dress like she was describing a royal coronation. I kept my mouth shut until I didn't. "So, we're just pretending nothing happened?" Everyone froze. Forks paused midair. "What are you talking about?" Dad asked, his tone clipped. "My car." A long silence. Then a sigh. "You're overreacting," he said. "It's just a car." Rebecca leaned in, her voice all honey and poison. "Diana, it's one day. A really important one. Can't you just be happy for us?" That was the moment I stood up. Not angrily, not dramatically. I just didn't want to sit there anymore, surrounded by people who could justify taking something from me without blinking. Later that night, back in my room, I found an envelope under my door. No name on it, just sealed, thick paper. I opened it with the kind of dread you can't explain until you've lived it. Inside was a wedding invitation. My brother and Rebecca, smiling in matching ivory outfits, posing like they were the face of some magazine ad. Tucked inside was a handwritten note. Hope you'll forgive us by then. No apology, just a deadline. I stared at it, then at myself in the mirror across the room. The kind of stare that strips everything down to the truth. They've taken everything, and now they want me to smile? For pictures? I whispered to my reflection. Maybe it's time I stopped playing nice. I waited until the house was quiet. No laughter, no TV, just the low hum of the fridge. Dad was sitting at the dining table, flipping through a stack of mail, pretending to be busy. I stood there a few feet away, my hands clasped together so I wouldn't let them shake. Dad, can we talk? He glanced up, then back down. Now's not a good time. It's never a good time with you, is it? He stood without answering and walked into the living room. I followed. I just need you to understand how that felt, what you did. He cut me off. I already told you, Diana, you're making a big deal out of something small. Something small. My voice stayed even, but inside I was boiling. Mom walked in with a laundry basket. Don't stir things up again, honey. Let's just keep the peace. There it was. Keep the peace. Translation. Stay quiet. Let Camden have what he wants. Again. I didn't chase them down this time. I walked back to my room and pulled out the notebook I'd started the night after the dinner. A plain black journal, no title, just truths. They avoid conflict by pretending nothing's wrong. I wrote, they think I'll wear down, but I'm done shrinking myself. And I meant it. 3 days later, I got the email. Subject line, thank you for the wedding gift. From Layla Green. I hesitated before clicking. I should have deleted it. But curiosity wins when pride is wounded. The message was syrupy sweet. Diana, we were so touched by your generosity. The car is perfect. We couldn't have imagined a more meaningful gift. It's not just transportation, it's love on wheels. You're the best. Attached were photos. My car, covered in ribbons. Just married, scrawled across the rear window. Camden standing next to it in a tux. Layla in white, both beaming like they'd earned it. I stared at the screen for a long time. A gift? No. They'd rewritten the story and cast me as the generous sister who handed over her pride and joy like a bouquet of roses. And everyone believed it. I printed the email, slid it into the back pocket of my journal. On the next page, I wrote, public betrayal disguised as gratitude, noted. Later that evening, I called Maya. She picked up on the third ring. Hey, how are you? I told her everything, the car, the email, the lies. She listened quietly, then said, wow. Are you sure they meant it that way? Maya. They said I gave it to them. Publicly. She paused. Maybe they didn't realize how much it meant to you. They knew. Another pause. Then I just don't want to get in the middle. The middle. I called my cousin Jenna next. She was always good at reading between the lines. Diana, you know how families are. People do things out of love, even when it hurts. Love doesn't erase boundaries, Jenna. She mumbled something about needing to get back to dinner. I didn't bother calling anyone else after that. They'd already decided who I was, cold, jealous, dramatic. The sister who never smiled. In photos, I remembered Thanksgiving a few years ago. Camden had landed a temporary job at a car dealership, and the whole table lit up like he'd won a scholarship to Yale. A week earlier, I'd gotten promoted to charge nurse. No one mentioned it. That was the pattern. This was just the explosion. The bridal shower was Saturday. I almost didn't go. But showing up wasn't about them. It was about seeing the truth with my own eyes. The hall was filled with pastel decorations, cupcakes with initials piped on top, a mimosa bar. Layla floated across the room in a floral dress, hugging everyone like she'd rehearsed it. When she spotted me, her face lit up like a stage light. Diana, she called. Everyone, this is Camden's amazing sister, the one who gave us our wedding wheels. Applause, cameras. A woman I didn't know clutched my hand and said, "You're the most supportive sibling I've ever seen." I smiled. because if I didn't, I'd cry. During the toast, Layla raised her glass and said, "Some people give flowers." Diana gave horsepower. Laughter, clinking glasses. My jaw tightened. They weren't just using me. They were turning me into a punchline. When the event wound down, I slipped out quietly. But before I reached the parking lot, one of the bridesmaids caught up to me. She looked around, then leaned in. "You're handling this a lot better than I would. I saw the paperwork. That car was in your name." I stopped walking. I had never told anyone that, not even Maya. So how did she know? And more importantly, who else did? The message said family meeting, like it was going to be a chance to clear the air. That's what Mom said on the phone. Just a little get-together to smooth things over. I wasn't naive enough to believe it, but I went, not because I thought they'd listen, but because sometimes you have to stand in the fire to feel exactly how hot it's gotten. They were already gathered in the living room when I arrived. Camden sat next to Layla on the couch, her hand neatly folded into his. Dad stood by the fireplace, arms crossed like he was the one under attack. Mom hovered near the kitchen archway with that brittle smile she used whenever guests came over. And then there was Uncle Ross, of all people. A neutral party, they called him, but he'd always been the family's cleanup guy when things got uncomfortable. Dad cleared his throat. "We wanted to talk, Diana, about your attitude lately." I didn't say anything. Camden spoke next. "It's just, we're worried you're letting your emotions get the best of you." Layla chimed in, sweet as ever. "And with the wedding so close, we just hope to keep everything peaceful. You know, family first." Mom nodded. "You've always been the smart one, sweetheart. Don't let something small drive a wedge between us." Then came the spin. Dad said the car wasn't taken, it was contributed, that I didn't need it the way Camden and Layla did, that families make sacrifices, that I was being unreasonable and making things awkward. They used words like embarrassment and public image, as if I was the one damaging the family name. Uncle Ross leaned forward and offered his voice of balance. "Sometimes, Diana, it's best to be the bigger person. Don't let pride take over. You're better than that." I looked at every one of them. Their expressions weren't angry, just rehearsed, like they'd practiced this version of events together. I stood, hands shaking but voice steady. "Thanks for the clarification." That was all I said. Outside, the sun had dipped just below the trees when Camden followed me to the driveway. He jogged a little to catch up. "Hey, listen about the car." I didn't respond. "I didn't think you'd care this much," he said, trying to sound remorseful. "You've never been the sentimental type." I stopped walking. Camden shrugged. "Dad said you've always been kind of a loner. Didn't think you'd need it. Plus, everyone knows you're not really the marrying kind." Anyway, that hit harder than I expected. A sentence meant to dismiss every choice I'd made. He tried to pat my arm. "It's just a car, Dee. You're still part of the family." That line. That cursed recycled line. I stared at him. Deadpan. Funny. I don't feel like family anymore. I walked away without another word. Later that evening, I checked my email. Subject: quick draft for rehearsal dinner. From Layla Green. It was a speech, a full-blown word-for-word speech for me. Lines like, "It's been a joy to watch Camden grow," and "as his sister, I couldn't be prouder," followed by a punchline. I gave them the car because love is about letting go. I sat there reading it, my stomach turning. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a script. A public performance they expected me to deliver, so the story stayed neat. So I'd fall back into place as the quiet, selfless sister. Layla ended the email with, "We know you'll do the right thing. Let us know if you need help practicing." I didn't respond. I printed it, highlighted that last line, folded it and added it to the back of my journal. 2 days later, my mother showed up, unannounced. She brought cookies. Oatmeal raisin, my favorite growing up. I let her in, not because I wanted to, but because it was easier than arguing at the door. We sat in silence for a bit, the tea between us getting cold. Finally, she said, "We didn't think you'd be so sensitive, Diana. Honestly." I kept my face neutral. "You've always been smart," she continued, stirring her tea without sipping it. "Why lower yourself to this kind of pettiness? You're better than this." That was her way of saying, stay in line. Swallow the hurt. Be quiet. She said she was worried about my health. That holding on to things would make me sick. That I used to be such a good girl. I didn't answer. Before she left, she leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Just read the speech, sweetheart. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." When the door closed, I stood still for a long time. Later that night, I opened the hall closet and pulled out the shoebox I hadn't touched in years. Inside were my father's old war medals. I used to think they meant something: sacrifice, honor, pride. I placed them in a bag along with the printed emails and speech draft. On the front, I wrote one word in black ink: receipts. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew this wasn't over. I woke up with a weight in my chest that no amount of deep breathing could lift. The email Layla sent, the thank you, masquerading as manipulation, was still fresh in my mind. I hadn't answered. I hadn't even spoken a word to anyone since reading it. But the silence was loud. My phone buzzed with messages. "So happy for your family. Such a generous sister. The car was such a beautiful touch. They had crafted the narrative, wrapped it in bows and smiles. And now the world was eating it up like wedding cake." I tried to speak to my mother that morning. She was stirring her coffee in the kitchen like nothing had changed. "Mom, did you know they said I gave them the car?" She didn't look up. "You're overthinking again. They're grateful. Why are you making this hard?" Just like that, I realized this wasn't confusion. It was strategy. Smile, ignore, dismiss, repeat. They were waging war with optics, and I was still trying to play by rules that never protected me. That afternoon, another email from Layla slid into my inbox. Rehearsal dinner speech draft for review. I opened it, bracing myself. It was thick with syrupy lines. "We're here today because of love and the sacrifices that show it." Then came the twist of the knife. The generosity of Diana, who could have kept the car but chose to give, followed by, "Love is about letting go." They had scripted a fantasy and handed me the role of grateful donor. And if I didn't read it, I'd be the bitter sister who ruined the mood. I replied with 4 words: "I'll review it. Thanks." Then I printed it, grabbed a red pen, marked every line that twisted truth, scribbled the word "nope" in the margins, underlined phrases that insulted my intelligence, wrote my own questions. Why do I need to lie for your happiness? The next day, I got a call from Aunt Clara. "Lunch?" she asked simply, her voice calm, like always. But there was something underneath it. We met at a quiet cafe outside town. She ordered a salad. I didn't touch mine. "I saw the photos," she said gently. "And the car." I didn't respond. "I remember when you bought it, how proud you were. Your name was on everything." Still, I stayed quiet. She folded her napkin. "Don't let them rewrite the story. You're not crazy, you're not overreacting, and you're not wrong." That cracked something in me. Not in a loud, shattering way, but in a soft, steady release. "Someone saw me. When we hugged goodbye," she said. "Don't let them shame you into silence." That evening was the rehearsal dinner. The banquet hall was lit with soft chandeliers and fake smiles. Everyone dressed in pastels, wine glasses clinking, camera flashes timed with laughter. I found my seat. My name card was decorated with flowers. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. Then Layla stood up. "We'd like to say a few words," she began. And by we, I mean Diana. She turned to me, smiling, expecting. I shook my head. The silence spread faster than any toast could. She pivoted. "Well, in that case," she lifted her glass. "Unbothered. Let's raise a toast to Diana. Her unselfish heart. Her willingness to Give when she didn't have to. The room applauded. Some people give flowers, she said with a smirk. Diana gave wheels. More applause. Laughter. My throat burned. My hands trembled in my lap. I stood up, walked out. I didn't wait for dessert. I didn't say goodbye. I left my name card on the table, right beside the untouched wine glass, and a napkin with my fingerprints on it. Outside, the evening air hit different. Cool. Sharp. I headed toward the parking lot when a server came up beside me. You dropped this, he said, handing me a folded piece of paper. It wasn't mine. It was the speech, the one I refused to read. But now it had underlines, question marks, circled phrases, and at the very top someone had scribbled a line in red. Do you still claim you did nothing wrong? The doors of the hall closed behind me. I stood there, paper in hand, heart pounding. I sat at my desk in the dim glow of my laptop screen, the house quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner. I reopened the speech draft Layla had tried to shove into my hand at the dinner. Red underlines bit at me like scars, phrases circled. In the margin, unmistakable handwriting. You owe them this. My breath caught. Camden's script, his tone, his control, all laid bare in one sheet of paper. It was never a plea. It was a command. I whispered to the empty room. So this is what family means now? The words felt foreign on my tongue. I snapped a photo with my phone and forwarded it to my own email as if I were archiving proof against my own forgetfulness. Documentation. Phase 1. I stared at the image, imagining how many times they'd replayed this narrative privately before unleashing it publicly. Later that afternoon, I drove over to my parents' home. The garage door was open and Dad was there, alone, stacking tools and shifting car parts without looking up. The smell of oil and concrete felt like home, but the silence between us now carried weight. Dad, I said evenly, why did you sell the car without telling me? He looked at me. Because I knew you'd say no, he answered. His voice was cool, and we didn't have time for drama. He stood firm, arms crossed. Camden's wedding is an investment in our family's future. You must understand that. I stared at him. Then I guess I was never part of your returns, I said. The words landed sharper than I intended. He softened his tone, extending an invitation. Show up tomorrow, smile, read the speech. If you do that, he said quietly, we can go back to normal. I didn't nod. I didn't agree. I turned away without looking back. That evening, a package arrived at my door. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a designer dress, silk, pale blush, shoes, and a salon appointment voucher. A card attached. Let's not let this hiccup ruin our day. The envelope was elegant, the handwriting delicate. They had tried to bribe the narrative back in their favor. I held the dress up against myself in the mirror. The fabric felt heavy, like Sunday formal wear I would never willingly wear for them. I dropped it. I stepped away. No guilt, only clarity. I sat at my laptop, hands trembling slightly, and typed one sentence. I will not be attending the wedding. I CC'd them all, Mom, Dad, Layla, Camden, Aunt Clara. I watched the words before sending, wrote them and rewrote them once. My hands weren't afraid, they were freeing themselves. The response came quickly. Mom's calls erupted into sobbing voices, alternately guilt-tripping and raging, telling me I was making things impossible. Camden texted, "You've made your point, now undo it." Layla's latest post said, "Some people can't stand seeing others happy." Mutual friends messaged me, "Can't we just have one day without drama?" I drafted responses, deleted them, then posted a quote, "Sometimes keeping the peace means." Walking away from the war zone, it felt like rebirth, a statement of my own boundary. Aunt Clara messaged privately, "Proud of you. You're doing what's right." Later at night, there was a tap at my front door. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding. I cracked the door open. Maya stood there, her face lit by the porch light, in her hand a flash drive. She didn't wait. She said quietly, urgently, "You need to see something." I woke before dawn, the room already humming with tension. My dreams had chased me, faces turned away, whispered judgments, the car's absence in empty driveways. When I walked past the driveway this morning, I felt the hollow more sharply than ever. My phone lit up with missed calls. "Are you coming? Don't make this weird." Each beep felt like an accusation. I dressed in muted tones, gray blouse, black slacks, nothing flashy, nothing that betrays I'm shaking inside. I stood before the mirror, replaying every moment I could. Weaponize. The annotated speech. The email. Aunt Clara's warning. I gripped my journal, my proofs, rehearsed my boundary. Today, it wasn't just about being heard. It was about reclaiming what they'd stolen quietly. A courier arrived mid-morning at the hotel. I was alone at the front desk, keycard in hand, when he handed me a sealed envelope labeled family meeting. Inside were crisp documents, the car transfer records, clearly showing no signature of mine. A third party had certified it. Also a contract sheet from Layla's marketing agent where the car's market value was listed as part of the wedding gift package. I sat, stunned, heart pounding. They were preempting me, laying traps with false narratives. I inhaled deeply, forwarded all documents to my personal email with timestamps, tagged them preemptive evidence. I would not be surprised. I would not be silenced. Later in the hotel lobby, Layla and Camden greeted arriving guests under crystal chandeliers and polite laughter. They saw me approach. Layla, lips curved into a practiced smile, said, "Diana, are you okay to read your speech now?" I held the envelope. I said, "No, I'm not okay because you're trying to turn betrayal into gratitude." Faces turned toward us. Layla's smile faltered. Camden stepped forward, tension stiffening his shoulders, but I stayed focused, voice low but resonant. "If you expect me to perform," I continued, "I'll need proof their lies are real first." A hush fell. Whispers rippled. Cameras flickered. I lowered my gaze, but I knew every eye was on me. They had created this moment, now I reclaimed it. That afternoon, my phone trembled in my hand as I called Nell. Her voice was calm, but intense. "They reviewed the documents. They're solid in court," she whispered. I nodded, no one saw, but inside my heart caught. I texted Layla's agent, "You have until noon. Clean this up or I file." Layla's phone vanished into a meeting. Hotel security guards glanced at us. I felt watched, exposed. But I was no longer afraid. Back in my suite, I stared at myself in the full-length mirror. I said, softly, "You are not the victim anymore." I copied every file to a secure thumb drive, hidden in my purse. I felt the burden shift. I was ready. Just as I prepared to leave for the venue, a notification blinked on my screen. "Court hearing motion filed, case number D344, you are defendant." My breath stopped, the stakes changed. It was no longer just family drama. It was public, legal, permanent. I woke that morning to my phone lighting up with notifications. My chest tightened as the first few headlines scrolled by. Layla sponsorships canceled, brand dropped wedding influencer, amid scandal, car gift discrepancy revealed. It felt like watching my life unravel in slow motion. Friends sent screenshots, family group chats buzzed, rumors bloomed. My parents called I didn't pick up. Camden texted, "Can we talk?" I deleted it. The silence was my power. They were striking back, but I was already moving. I didn't respond to anything directly. I sat on my laptop and typed one line. "Evidence doesn't scream. It hums until you can't deny." I posted it with no tags, no explanation. Within minutes, my inbox flooded. "Are you okay? What's next? Do you need anything?" I didn't answer. Everything about me, up until now, had been laid out. Now I waited for them to show their hand first. Then my lawyer called. Her voice was urgent, but calm. Layla's legal team is preparing a defamation suit. Unless I recant. I pause, heart pounding. They want to trap me in my silence. But no, I would not be bullied back into quiet. Later that afternoon, a crisp, formal letter arrived on my doorstep. The Carrington family had frozen my access to the family trust, citing breach of loyalty. All the funds I once helped sustain, they were locked out. My vision blurred. I sat in my car, numb. The family I built contributions for had just turned those contributions into weapons. They tried starving me emotionally and financially. But in that emptiness, I felt resolve. They would not make my kindness a cage. As the wedding venue neared, I walked into the lobby. Layla and Camden stood greeting early arrivals, dressed in ivory and smug confidence. Their smiles were too practiced, too tight. I stepped forward. My voice was steady, low but loud enough. You can tell all the narratives you want, but I own the proof. The crowd froze. Cameras snapped. Layla's face went pale. Camden's jaw worked. I lifted the envelope evidence inside. I said, "Today, no one reads from a script but me." I turned and walked away. The air was thick with surprise, whispering, shame. I didn't wait for applause or boos. I walked outside. My phone rang. It was the courthouse clerk. "A temporary injunction has been filed against Layla and Camden," she said. My heart stuttered. The fight left the living room and entered the courtroom. The note had been sitting on my kitchen counter for days. Just one sentence. "Check page 7, you forgot this document." I almost didn't. I figured I already knew everything that contract had to say. But something in me, maybe stubbornness, maybe instinct, told me to go back. I pulled out the folder, flipped past the glossy cover page, through all the standard legal jargon, and there it was. Page 7. Tucked into the bottom corner was a clause I hadn't remembered seeing, one that didn't match the final version they'd bragged about at the wedding. It read, "Transfer of ownership is contingent upon the signed consent of the primary title holder," and my signature, never there. I stared at that page for a long time. Then I laughed, quietly at first. Not bitter, more like I'd just solved a puzzle they thought I'd never notice. They never got my signature. They never had legal ownership. All that show, all that noise built on a document that was never valid. I leaned back, breathing out something I didn't even know I'd been holding. Sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. 2 days later, I was sitting across from Mr. Copeland. Same man who stood beside my mother in court decades ago. His office hadn't changed much, still smelled like aged paper and cedar, still had the heavy framed law certificates on the wall. He looked up at me, glasses low on his nose. "After reading through the contract, you held your ground," he said, "even when they thought you wouldn't. This clause makes your position clear. They acted in bad faith." I nodded. I wasn't angry anymore. Just ready. "I don't want to sue them, Mr. Copeland," I said. "But I want this corrected publicly." He gave a slight smile. "A cease and desist will get their attention. And you have every legal right to demand retraction. You're not just claiming what's yours, you're restoring justice. It wasn't about a car anymore. It was about who I was before they tried to write me out of my own story." 3 days passed. Then came the letter, typed, formal, with Camden's name at the bottom, but every word soaked in Layla's sugar coating. They apologized. Said the wedding finances had spiraled. Said they regret the misunderstanding about the car. Said they'd reimburse the value in full. Tucked in the envelope was a photo of them on a balcony, champagne glasses in hand, somewhere tropical. A note on the back, "We hope to rebuild someday." I didn't even flinch. I tore the photo in two, clean through their smiling faces. I kept the letter. I wasn't erasing what happened. I was remembering it on my terms. That weekend I drove out to the old house. The property was unkempt, but Mom's garden was still there, hidden under weeds and vines. I got down on my knees in the dirt, pulled out the weeds, dug up patches of dry earth, replanted what I could, marigolds, lavender, a single sunflower in the center. As my hands moved, my mind wandered. I thought about how much energy I had spent trying to prove myself to people who measured love and leverage. I wasn't just reclaiming a car, I was reclaiming space. Space to grow something new. Mom used to say, no one can take from you what you've already planted in yourself. I never really understood that until now. By dusk, I stood up, wiped the dirt from my hands, and looked at that single sunflower stretching upward, resilient, not flashy, but still standing. Back home, I made tea and sat on the porch. The sun was setting, streaks of gold across the driveway, where that ribbon-covered car had once sat like a throne built from lies. I picked up my phone, opened the voice recorder, and hit record. Dear Diana, I said, steady and slow, you are not selfish for choosing yourself. I saved the file under the name July Resolve. Then I leaned back in my chair, let the night roll in, and whispered one last thing to myself. Not a threat, not a vow of revenge, just a promise. Now it's time to write my own vows, not for anyone else, but for me.